So the people of Gaza are suffering tremendously, and there's a human tragedy. So I have one very simple question, which I'm not hearing anyone asking. Why aren't the people of Gaza calling for their own government, their own leaders, to surrender to Israel, to stop fighting? If there's so much suffering occurring among their people, and they know that if Hamas surrender, or perhaps even negotiate, not that I think Israel should, but if they were to do that, then there could be an end to the human suffering in Gaza. Why aren't they calling for that? We see occasionally the odd Gazan complaining, oh, this is Hamas, but there's no concerted effort, articulation of people, even those in Judea and Samaria in the West Bank, where people are saying, please, Hamas, stop, so we can stop this human catastrophe. Why is no one saying that? And why aren't we hearing that? It's all the responsibility of Israel. This is a complete enigma to me. And the key point here to realise is that there has been an infantilizing of the Palestinians, removing their moral agency, not giving them any moral accountability. Why aren't they rising up against their tyrannical leaders? Why aren't they calling for an end to the war? Why aren't they calling on Israel to help them? Gazan civilians perhaps surrendering en masse, turning themselves into the Israeli forces, say, please help us. We don't want a part of this. This is not what we want. The conclusion we have to come to is that they do like what Hamas do. And we know that from polling. They support what Hamas did on October 7th. And there is a cultural, widespread complicity, support, belief in the Hamas ideology. Now, I know people can change. We look at Mossab Youssef, the son of Hamas, he changed. We know that. But we take away all their moral agency at our peril. The first responsibility of Israel is to protect our citizens, not to try and de-radicalize an enemy. But even then, we just take away all the moral accountability on their side. Well, because they're a displaced, stateless people. Really, Israel gave them basically a mini state. It was a mini two-state solution by disengaging from Gaza, even though it was Israeli territory, Jewish territory. And what do they get in response? You know, the Jews after World War II, did they go about beheading German babies, raping German women because of all their grievance, justified grievance? I'm sure if they did that, the world wouldn't be particularly happy, and I wouldn't be particularly happy either. Because we still have moral agency, even if you're a victim of oppression. Not that I think they are. They've chosen this to be in this endless situation of limbo and statelessness because it's not really about them getting a state. But we take away all their moral agency. Well, what about the children in Gaza, the babies? The terrible suffering that they're experiencing. You can't give them moral agency, they're children. Agreed. But whose responsibility are they for their terrible suffering? The children of Gaza are the responsibility of their parents and their society, who could choose to take a very different path and avoid all this conflict and bloodshed. But no, it's laid all at the hands of Israel. And by the way, do not think for a second that I don't find all this bloodshed tragic. Even the bloodshed of our enemies, even those who have chosen an evil path. Because we would much rather people just change their ways and there's no suffering of anyone. But let's be clear. Gazan society is complicit, as Mossab Youssef, son of a Hamas co-founder and leader, said. We know this from polling, we know this from their actions. but we infantilize them. This is wrong. We didn't take the moral agency away of Nazi Germany, saying, oh, well, it's because they're aggrieved with how they were treated after World War One, and it's just a few people, some pockets of the German leadership and elite. No. We held the society responsible, and that's how we acted in our warfare. But we infantilize them. And we say, oh, if we could just make it work, if they could just find a way to get a bit more national self-determination, then it would all go away. I want to show you a fascinating clip. I want to show you a clip of Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Have a look at this.
You talked a lot with Senator Reid about Israel's responsibility to provide aid in Gaza. Why does Israel have a responsibility to provide aid to Gaza? Israel was the victim of an unprovoked, vicious attack on October 7th. Why should they provide aid to the aggressor nation? Or aggressor, Gaza's not a nation, to the aggressors on October 7th. We didn't provide aid to Germany and Japan during World War II.
What we did provide aid to and assistance to many of the countries that we've operated in recently.
But not in World War II. If you had been in George Marshall's or Dwight Eisenhower's position in World War II, would you have wanted to provide aid to Germany? You talked a lot.
This is the first time I've heard someone senior mentioning this point. And it's good. Starting to wake up and realise, why are we putting the responsibility on Israel's doorstep to provide aid when they're the victim of a society that has chosen to wage war against them? They've got to feed the enemy. Again, it's the infantilizing of the Palestinians. They're all just victims, taking away their moral agency. Now I want you to have a look at Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who also seems to be starting to wake up to this point.
Much of the understandable passion, outrage, and anger directed at Israel for the plight of Palestinian civilians in Gaza, but some of that might also be reserved and directed for Hamas. It remains astounding to me that the world is almost deafeningly silent when it comes to Hamas. We would not be where we are had they not chosen to engage in one of the most horrific acts of brutality and terrorism on October 7th, and had they then, having done that, not refused these many, many months to get out of the way of civilians, to stop hiding behind them, to put down their arms, to release the hostages, to surrender. Where's the outrage there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But the thing he's also missing is that it's not just Hamas that we need to question and ask about their moral choices. It's also Gazan society and the people of Gaza. Why aren't they speaking out? Well, fear of death and it's a terror state. Well, they said in private polling that they support what Hamas did. And quite frankly, when a situation is that dire, where frankly their lives are already on the line, surely it would make sense to try and resist and to try and at least even find ways of upending your Hamas rulers, even if it's articulated by those Arabs in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria or elsewhere, or find other ways of resisting, or at least articulating a disapproval. But no, we take away all their moral accountability. I want to read you this quote by Melanie Phillips on this point of the infantilizing of the Palestinians. She says, the cause of despair is that they don't have a state. That's what this is all about. They've been offered one over and over again from the 1930s onwards. The last offer consisted of 95% plus of the territory that they were demanding, and their reaction has always been to refuse and to start murdering Jews. We just haven't been listening. The world hasn't been listening. We've been infantilizing them, saying, oh, it's because they don't have a state, it's because they don't have self-determination, blah, 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 blah. But we don't actually hear them and hear what they're saying. And we infantilize them. And I think part of the reason is brilliantly articulated by Inat Wolf I'm going to show you a clip of her. She is a former, I believe, Labour Party member of the Knesset, left-leaning, trying to find a way to make a two-state solution work. And she articulates so brilliantly the perhaps the cognitive dissonance that we have, where we so desperately try to justify their grievance and the actions of the Palestinians that we say, oh, well, it really must be just because they want a state. And the reason we have to believe that is because otherwise their behavior is just so outrageous. Have a listen to what she says.
With Palestinians. And I realized that they've always told us what they wanted. We just didn't listen. Or when we listened, it sounded so outrageous that we didn't take it seriously. But they've always told us what they wanted. From the river, from the Jordan River, to the Mediterranean Sea. I was told you need to say which river and which sea these days. And, Palestine will be free. Of what exactly? Of a sovereign Jewish state.
So there's something called normalcy bias, where when people are acting so outrageous or they say things that are so obscene, we assume, oh, well, they can't really mean that, or, oh, if we just give them that, then it'll be fine. Because things have to remain normal. We made this mistake prior to World War II in the West relationship with Hitler. Oh, it's just because of a bit of grievance here and there. But we haven't actually been listening to the Palestinian side all along. We keep thinking, oh, come on, there's got to be a meeting of the minds. There's got to be. No. We've offered them all we could possibly offer and all they sometimes claim to be demanding, other than their outrageous demand, which is to get rid of Israel, which is not going to happen. But we just haven't been listening. And so actually, people who say we've got to shift from the two-state solution model are called hardliners, are called ideological. Actually, it's those who want to keep dancing to these same tunes, these same two-state solution tunes, and you're burying your heads in the sand and not listening to what the other side are telling you. That is a form of being ideological over being pragmatic and being a realist. It's those who keep singing that same old tune. You're not actually listening to what they tell you. And if you say, well, if we just keep extending our hand, then eventually they'll compromise. We left Gaza. Time and time again, Israel has offered steps, even when the other side have shown absolutely no sign of contrition or willingness to compromise. And we've always been met with a response of genocide. So we have to stop infantilizing them. We have to hold them accountable, and we have to say, and by the way, I'll be honest, prior to October 7th and seeing the reaction of the Arabs in the Palestinian territories, so-called Palestinian territories, and throughout the anti-Israel campaigners throughout the rest of the world, prior to that, I was more open to this idea of, well, maybe let's see if we can make two states work. I just want to be pragmatic. I don't want war. I don't want bloodshed. I just want us to do whatever we can make work, even though I knew it was so clearly to me such a cynical ploy to get rid of Israel because they were just Arabs and happy with Arab unity. But I thought maybe just for the sake of pragmatism. And now I say, following down that path is anti-pragmatic, and it would be totally blind to reality, and we have to listen to what they're telling us and not bury our heads in the sand and adopt a different strategy. We have to stop misinterpreting what the other side is telling us. Stop infantilizing them. Stop taking away their moral accountability. Instead, listen to what they've actually been saying, not just now, but for the last 75 years, and choose a different path, a sane path. I'm Ollie Annersfeld, and you're watching JTV.
Hi everybody, thanks for watching. If you want to watch another one, click here. If you want to subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest JTV content, click here. And if you're feeling really keen, you can click the join button down below underneath this video, where you can get perks including early access to new videos and private live discussions with me, where we can talk about JTV content and strategy moving forward, and I'll get to hear from you. Thanks again for watching.